Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to CertaPay's coffee break. And today we're talking about paid leave, loans, payroll, unemployment, a little mix of everything. And we're also going to answer as many questions as we can this morning. And hope we send you off with some good info and clarification on a very tricky situation. So CertaPay is so glad you're here. I am Rachel Camella. I'm your host, and I'm here with Cindy Merkel and Janet Lang from our HR team. And it looks like a few other people from our team. I see Claire on the line and some other people from the CertaPay HR team, because we are here for you, and we want to help you during these crazy times and get us all through it. So again, it's our coffee break. I am drinking a Dharma espresso from Tempo, and it's made into an Americano, and it is delicious. I hope you all have a good coffee. I know Claire has an espresso from Starbucks, or something good from Starbucks. I hope you all have something good. All right. So here we go. Cindy, you got everything? Is our screen clear?
Yes, ma'am. I'm good to go.
And I may mute a few of you as we go along. If you don't have your phone muted, go ahead and mute it. And if I mute you, keep it muted until we get to the end. If you need to unmute yourself, that's fine. All right. So some of the tricky things that we've talked about are the FFCRA and ERC and the PPP. We've got acronyms for everything. But just to kind of breeze over it, we have the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and this is paid leave for certain employees under certain situations. And we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. The Employee Retention Credit, this is a tax credit. It is primarily designed for people who are not working. So employers of all sizes, but mainly it's because your employees are not actually working, and this is a credit that you continue to pay them, and then you can claim some credit against your quarterly 941. We'll talk about that in just a bit as well. And then we've got the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. This is a loan designed for companies under 500, and that is per location. And it is a loan. There's a forgiveness option for it, but it has some specific parameters, so we'll talk about that. We are also going to talk about some unemployment and what that looks like, and then we'll talk about how all of this overlaps. So let's dig in a little bit. With all of these, when we talk about certain calculations, it's averages. You want to keep that in mind. So your full-time employees, your part-time employees, we're looking at an average count. So you would take all of your employees and get average numbers. When we talk about individual employees, especially under the FFCRA, that threshold is at the time of the request. So if somebody asks for the sick pay under the FFCRA, but let's say you started the year with 700 employees, you may not have to follow those new guidelines. However, you've reduced your force, you have less employees, so at the time of the request, you may have dipped under that 500 number. You would now be obligated to follow that. So very specifically, that is at the time of the request. Again, I do want to remind you guys to mute your phones if you're just popping in. Keep your phone on mute, and that'll help minimize our background noise. When we calculate wages, also we're using an average. You want to look at, especially with our PPP loan, we're taking an average. When you apply for your loan, you're using all of those wages, tips, commissions, bonus, whatever it is, along with the base wage, hourly, salary, whatever it is, and then use that as an average. We use those numbers when you apply for the loan, so you use the same numbers when you pay the wages in order to get forgiven. So let's go over the emergency paid leave. I'm going to go a little bit fast over it, or just a little more high level. If you need more details, just type it in the chat. We'll go back over it in more detail. But we've talked about these for quite a bit now. So If we need more details, no worries, we'll do it. Okay, with the FFCRA, this applies to all employers with under 500 employees, and all of the employees are eligible for that 80 hours, regardless of how long they worked for you. So somebody may have started with you last week, and then all of a sudden they come down with COVID-19 symptoms. They would be eligible for this sick pay under this FFCRA. It's 80 hours of paid leave. And again, we're talking about an average. So it's not automatically 80 hours, but it's 2 weeks of paid leave. So if somebody normally works 20 hours a week, then they would be eligible under this for 2 weeks of 20 hours each week with a 40-hour cap. So it's an average. It's not an automatic fixed number. And it's full pay for individual, for if it's the individual. And that means you've got the individual employee themselves has COVID-19 symptoms. They have been told by a healthcare provider to quarantine. They've actually tested positive for COVID-19. So the actual individual is the one impacted. That's when it's full pay. And the cap is $511 a day. There's also a 2/3 pay provision under the sick pay portion, and that's when the individual is caring for somebody else. So they are caring for an individual who is positive for COVID-19, or they're caring for their children whose daycare, childcare provider is unavailable, schools are closed, whatnot. So 2/3 pay when it's somebody caring for somebody else, that's capped at $200 a day. Full pay when it's the actual individual. I'm muting some people here. Don't forget, please mute yourselves. Let's see. Here we go. This is, found it. Okay. So sometimes the questions we get are about symptoms and temperatures and whatnot. So it's kind of the same answer. You want to increase your communication with everybody at these times. Normally, we don't ask these kinds of things. Normally, we would never take somebody's temperature or automatically eliminate people, but these are different times. So right now it is okay to ask about symptoms, and very specifically, it's okay to ask about specific things. Have you been running a fever? Do you have a cough? Do you have specific symptoms from COVID-19? These are okay to ask, and it will give you information. Now, the temperature taking thing, we've got a couple of different viewpoints on there, and there are a couple things that you should consider. First of all, having a fever does not automatically mean you have COVID-19. And also, if you flip that the other way, not having a temperature doesn't mean that you don't have it. So taking somebody's temperature only tells you if somebody has a temperature. It doesn't give you definitive information about COVID-19. So what CertaPay says is be careful about it and be aware of some of the steps you should take. So if you choose to take temperatures with your company in some format, you want to add some privacy provisions. So do you have a private location? Have you trained the individual taking the temperatures? And are you saving the information you learn from that in a HIPAA compliant format? So if you are writing down whether or not somebody has a temperature, you now have private information that you have to file appropriately. So take all of these things into consideration and factor whether or not it makes sense that you're taking your employees' temperatures. It doesn't, you might get a better result by asking people to take their own temperatures at home and then let you know if they have a temperature or not. So just be mindful of some of the privacy pieces surrounding that before you make the decision to add that as a practice. Be careful about eliminating employees over 65. You don't want to just say automatically if you're over 65, you shouldn't come to work, because now we've got a protected class, we've got other confidential information, and if somebody has been directly told by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, then they would qualify for FFCRA. just being 65 doesn't mean you automatically qualify. So again, conversations are important. Ask people, who did they speak to? Who told them to stay home? What are the circumstances and whatnot? Information will help you with all of these questions. So with the sick pay provision, as I said, it's an 80-hour max. And when this all started, you may have had somebody who had symptoms or was told to stay home for a week or 72 hours or whatnot, and you may have used a portion of that sick pay, and maybe they have some time remaining, and that's okay. The idea behind the 80 hours is to stop the spread. So the intention was for it to be used consecutively, but in the event where maybe somebody used a week before it went into effect and then 40 hours under the sick pay provision and then returned to work because they no longer had symptoms. And now, let's say down the road, maybe in July, all of a sudden they're running a fever and they've got a cough and, you know, these are symptoms again. They have only used 40 hours of the sick pay. So now it is okay to use the remaining 40 under this plan. And it is the cap at 80. Again, average normal hours that they would work in a 1 week time frame, and that would be paid out at full pay. I do see some questions. Cindy, anything we should address at this point?
No, since there's over 50 participants, I'd rather wait to the end so we make sure that everything gets answered systematically, and we can just jump back to whatever the related screen would be for that topic.
Great. Okay. And so I also want to add, CertaPay created a fantastic form for whenever anybody is going to be on leave. There are no required forms that you have to fill out, but this is a great form that helps you track documentation. If anybody is interested in that form, you know, we're happy to help you with that. Reach out to us, make sure we have your contact info, and we'll shoot that over to you. As well as, you know, there is a required poster. And if you don't have that poster, if you'd like us to help you with that, again, we can do that. We can get that to everybody as well. So the FMLA expansion piece is also a part of the FFCRA. And this, again, applies to all employers who are under 500 employees. But this one does have a 30-day number for your employees. So they have to have been working with you for 30 days to be eligible for the FMLA expansion piece. And this is, again, at the time of the request. So somebody may start with you today, but then all of a sudden, 30 days from now, they might have a childcare issue, in which case they would be eligible for this expansion under the FFCRA. So the emergency FMLA expansion piece is an additional 12 weeks of an additional 10 weeks of leave on top of those first two. So you have a child care provision in the first part under the sick pay, which allows people to use up to 80 hours to care for a child whose school is closed. In the expansion, they've added 10 more weeks onto that. And so that is covered at 2/3 pay. Again, you know they're caring for somebody else, so it's 2/3, caps $200 a day. And that goes for 10 more weeks beyond that. So a 12-week total number. Okay. And this is specific to childcare. So your employee is unable to come to work because schools are closed, the child care provider is not available, the daycare is closed, summer camp is closed, whatever it is. And that's one of the questions we do get is what happens at the end of the school year, which for most of us is probably somewhere around this Friday. What happens when school is over and now it's summertime? Shouldn't they be able to come back to work without the FMLA? Well, it still applies in the summer. This is in place through the end of the year, all the way through December, if there's a child care issue all the way through, and that applies to summer camp. So if the normal camp that they would go to or whatever their summer plan is altered or unavailable as a result of COVID-19, then they are still eligible for this FMLA expansion. And I also want to note that the child care provider could be anyone. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be your mother-in-law, anyone who would care for your children while you're working is a child care provider. And if that person or organization or situation is not available as a result of COVID-19, then this FMLA expansion applies. There are a couple of exceptions. I would caution you to be careful about saying that you're exempt, because the way it works is there's only an exemption in a couple of small places. The first is if you're under 25 employees, and during the course of this, you may have eliminated some positions. And if one of the positions is now gone that you would have, you don't have to offer it back to somebody. It doesn't exempt you from paying for the wages while they're out for childcare reasons. What it exempts you from is bringing the position back in. And then, and that's only a small case where you're under 25 employees, you don't have to add the position back in. Now, there are some cases where if you're under 50 employees, you may qualify for the hardship exemption. Again, very rare cases. And because we know this is dollar for dollar credit against your 941, it can't really be a financial reason. It's more of a hardship. So we have a couple of clients where it takes such an in-depth training process to train the individuals in these positions. And if all of the employees were out on the FMLA expansion, they would actually be closed. It would cause them to close because they would not be able to get people in these positions. That's an example where the FMLA, the hardship exempt status might be the case. Another example is we had a client who their entire inventory is a live product. And if they did not have people in the positions, all of their inventory would die and be ruined, and therefore it would cause them to close. So these are hardship examples where it causes the business to close and the exempt status might be the case. If you think you might have a hardship exempt status and you want to have a conversation with us, please reach out to us. We'll help you talk through that. So to talk about how this is paid, it's on your quarterly returns. So it's a dollar for dollar credit. You would add up, and this applies to the sick leave and the emergency expansion piece, and it's a dollar for dollar credit measured against that 941. So you would take all of your wages paid under these leaves and subtract it directly from what you would owe on your payroll taxes for your 941. And we've seen some cases where people are processing their 941 payments and their payroll in the same pay cycle so that it makes it an immediate credit. Otherwise, most of us do our payroll taxes quarterly. And so what you would do is just add up all the wages that you paid for these sick leaves, add up all of your payroll taxes due, and subtract it. And then you either pay the difference or maybe you even have a credit due. So let's do a quick example. Let's say you paid $5,000 in payroll wages toward people on leave, and then you put together your 941 quarterly return and you owe $8,000 in payroll taxes. So you subtract the $5,000 from that directly, and then you only pay that $3,000. So let's flip that.
Given every caller, you may experience
somebody's on hold. So let's flip that. Let's say you paid $8,000 in wages and you only owe $5,000 in payroll taxes. Now you have a $3,000 deficit. The IRS has created a credit form where you can file the form that shows you have a $3,000 credit owed to you, and they are stating that they will get those credits back to business owners within 2 weeks. So in the event that you pay more wages than you have payroll taxes due, there's a plan for that. So don't worry. And real quick, before we go into our other pieces, let's just talk about leave versus layoff versus the paid leave. So if a business is open, and you can think about it versus being open and not open, the employee is able to work or not able to work. So just a high level there. But if your business is open and operating, you need your employees to come into work, and they cannot for one of those reasons. They're sick, childcare issues, they're positive for COVID, they're caring for a sick spouse, whatever it is. You're open, you need your employee, but the employee can't come because of one of those things. That's where the paid leave kicks in. So we flip that. You are closed. Your business has been ordered to close. You are not yet reopened. Your employees are available to work, but can't because you're not open. That's the layoff status. That's furlough. They're laid off. They can't work because you're not open. Those employees are eligible to apply for unemployment benefits. So there's a big difference there. All right, how we doing? We're still going to do our questions at the end, Cindy?
Yes, I have them all captured. I think it's just.
Okay, good. Okay, got it. All right, so now we've got the employee retention credit. As I said before, it applies to all size companies, and this is it's a credit for you to pay your employees who are not working. And so it's a tax credit against your 941, and it's 50%. So you would pay the wages to these people. They may not be working, and then you can get half of those wages credited back. So the wage cap is up to $10,000 in wages, and the tax credit cap is $5,000. So people ask, why would I do this instead of something like the FFCRA or the PPP? Well, these are business decisions. You want to figure out which one makes the most sense for you. Let's say you want to do everything you can to help your employees and you want to pay them anyway. This is a little boost to help you in that process. It's only going to credit half of that amount, but it's at least something. And when we talk about the PPP, this is the Paycheck Protection Program. This is a loan. It applies to all employers under 500, and that is per location, the fine print. And the average, the calculation for your loan amount is based on the wages you paid. So we take all of the wages in the previous year or in the whatever months we have if you're a newer business, and we get an average monthly number of wages. And then that number is times 2.5. And once you get your first loan disbursement, you have an 8-week window to use that. And so here's the concept. The concept is that they're providing a loan amount for you to pay wages that will cover a 2-month window. And so they do the average calculation and whatnot so that you're going to pay back the same amount that you would have paid those employees anyway. So when we talk about getting that number forgiven, you want to be very careful. You want the same number of employees and the same wages paid to those employees. So you can't take your loan amount and then pay it to 5 people when you had 25 employees before. So you want to be careful. You want to look at the loan numbers on your application to apply and pay it the same way. So the same number of employees, the same dollar amount. It doesn't have to be the exact same employees by name because we know you may not have been able to get everybody back, but counting one for one on the employee count. Now we have a tricky question that came up, and that's the FTE number. And we all went through our full-time employee equivalent count when ACA kicked in a couple years ago. So just kind of put that on the back burner. Save that for ACA counting. For the purpose of your loan repayment, when you count FTEs, they just want to know full-time or part-time. How many did you have before and how many do you have now? So you want to have those numbers match. So however you are counting it for your loan application, do it the same way for your forgiveness application. And you can just count 1 for everyone who's full-time and 0.5 for everyone who's part-time. Another way to do it is add up all the hours of everybody who worked in the window, divide by 40 to just get a number of full-time count. You can do that, but do it the same way on the front as on the back, just so that you're matching there. Don't do it one way on the front and a different way in the back. That will get you in a little bit of an issue with the forgiveness number. So just be the same on both of those. So the 75-25 split is 75% of your loan dollars need to go toward wages. And then the other 25% can be toward operating expenses that are fixed, like your rent, your utilities, your electric bill, internet service. And so it can be for things like your actual internet provider or your cell phone provider, but it can't be for software like Netflix or different kinds of software programs. So be careful there. I don't think most people are going to have trouble reaching that 25% number if you just use your rent and your electric bill and whatnot. But be careful not to claim software programs. You know, we got some issues there. A recent clarification that we got was a little bit of wiggle room on that 8-week window. So they originally said the curtain went down. It was the first day you got it, exactly 56 days from there. But now we've got some clarification that if you have a payroll cycle that, let's say you got your funds on Monday, but your payroll cycle starts on Friday, then it is okay to shift your window to match your payroll cycle. And the way the federal government has defined the forgiveness portion is that it's up to you. It's up to you, the business owner. You fill out the application, you provide the documents and information, and the lender is not required to independently verify that information. So all they're going to do is say, yes, I received it. Yes, they told me it's accurate. And yes, you're forgiven. So it's that easy. So don't be afraid about that 11-page forgiveness application. Just fill in the information the best you can, be as accurate as you can, provide your backup wage documents, electric bill, whatever you need to provide for your backup, and you should be good to go. All right. So talking about unemployment, I did have some feedback from our team that said, be careful about too much information on a slide, which is my biggest thing. I hate to have too much information on a slide because I know you guys are all reading this slide right now. So what I wanted to tell you is don't worry about all of the information. There are so many different pieces of this unemployment, but here's what you need to know. You need to know that you have state unemployment, and that's whatever your state's unemployment is, anywhere from $250 to $550-ish per week, and anywhere from 12 weeks to some of them go up to 20 weeks or even more of regular state unemployment. So that's what you've got, regular state unemployment. And then beyond that, the CARES Act has added an unemployment compensation and assistance program. So individuals get that extra $600 boost, and that's that PEUC. So an extra little $600 boost that goes along with their normal state unemployment. And then you have the PUA. Again, please don't memorize any of this. It's written here, but it's basic stuff that you need to just kind of understand. There's a $600 a week amount that will also run through the states, but that's for the people who normally wouldn't qualify for unemployment. So your independent contractors, your 1099, self-employed, the gig economy workers like the Lyft driver and Uber driver. So that PUA is for those people, the ones that don't qualify for the state coverage. And then you have that FPUC, which is an extra boost once your regular state employment ends. So pretty simple. You've got your state unemployment, and then you have the $600 boost that comes from the federal government, which is the pandemic assistance. And then you have the up to $600 benefit for the people that don't normally qualify. That's it. It's really simple. Don't worry about the details or the other pieces. Just know that there's something out there pretty much for everybody. And the other piece is all of the applications have to run through the state. So there's no go apply to the federal government. You're going to apply through the state, and all of the money travels through the state programs. Good?
Yep.
All right. So let's see what we've got. I know there's a bunch of questions rolling through, so let's hear it.
Okay, first question. Does CertaPay have a report to calculate the 2/3 pay for caring for an individual? Basically, do we have a report that's going to go ahead and calculate the 2/3 for them?
Yes, I love that question. CertaPay has a report for everything. Our reporting capability is one of my favorite things, because as soon as this all happened, that's one of the things we did first. We have an amazing team of IT professionals, and they went to work on some fantastic reporting codes. So we can code all of that FFCRA leave pay. We can code, we have reports for PPP applications and forgiveness. We have reports for any of these pieces. And it's made so easy that even when people clock in, or not even clock in, when people process payroll, we've got the hours coded immediately on the front end. So when it comes time to doing the 941 work, it's a click of a button and we've got all the reports at our fingertips. One step further from there, CertaPay also does 941 reporting for a lot of our clients. So not only can we create reports that help you if you do your own, but if you want to just say, I can't deal, we can do it for you. So great question, and thank you for that plug. I didn't even mean to do that.
Okay, next question. Does taking the credits under the FFRCA jeopardize the PPP loan? The answer would be yes. There is no double dipping. You can only do one or the other.
Yeah, and so you want to be careful with all these. And again, these are such important questions, because it seems like you could do it. Well, I've got this person, I'm paying everybody, and this one's out on leave, so now the leave is over here, and but if you've got, what you want to ask yourself is, you can only get the funds from one place. So if you've got the loan dollars and you're paying people and you have the PPP loan during that 8-week window, that is the only place you get funds. And that's kind of good for the employees, because they're not using that FFCRA at that time. Just process it as regular pay. And then once you get outside of your 8-week window, then people can be out on FFCRA and you can take those tax credits then. So during your 8-week window, the only thing you do is use your loan dollars to pay for regular wages.
Okay.
And same thing with, if you're using, oh, sorry, I just wanted to add more to that, but anytime, if you're using, we actually had somebody who got the PPP loan, and then she had an employee who was going to be out, but they had to replace the position. So what she did is she used the wages to pay for all the people who were actually working, but then the woman who was out on the FFCRA qualified for 2/3 pay. She claimed those wages separate and took the tax offset because she wasn't claiming them under the PPP loan. She was paying somebody else in her place. So as long as you're only using it in one place, they can work concurrently, but be careful.
You ready?
Yes.
Can the employee dictate when they go on leave under the FFRCA? I have an employee who took herself off the schedule and submitted her application 3 weeks later, giving her 15 weeks of leave, 3 weeks unpaid, and then the FMLA then the FMLA kicked in. Do you need me to read that again, Rachel?
So can they dictate FFCRA?
Can the employee dictate when they go on leave? Let's start there.
Well, okay, there's a couple of issues. It seems like if they went on leave but didn't notify anyone for 3 weeks, that's an issue. So I guess the question is, there's a communication situation. You need to figure out what's going on, because it isn't automatic. No, it isn't really dictated by the employee. It's really a collaborative effort. So the employee would have to communicate with you and tell you why they can't come in. It's not automatic paid leave. It's leave for specific reasons. So there needs to be a conversation. The employee would have to say, I tested positive for COVID-19. Boom. That's really easy and basic. And then you have 2 weeks. You have a 2-week window. So there's no 15 weeks. There's no, automatic 3 weeks. There's no, I'll tell you later. It's a question of, here's what's going on. I need to take leave. What should I do? That's the approach there. So it seems like maybe there's a bigger issue or something else. So if you want to reach out to us after this, maybe we can help you we can talk you through that situation.
I agree with Rachel. I think there's probably a little bit more that we need to know from an information perspective, having an employee to take themselves off the schedule without permission.
Right. I mean, that's not what it's there for. It's there to help people who are in a difficult situation that's directly connected to COVID-19. And that means specific things. They are sick, they have symptoms, they're caring for a child whose daycare is closed. Like, it's very specific. So it sounds like maybe we need some more information, and then we can give you some more guidance. So I'm happy to help you.
Okay, next question. If you take the payroll tax credit, you will have to eventually repay the monies, correct?
Yes. Okay. So the PPP, the payroll tax credit or the PPP? What are we talking about? If you take the payroll tax credit, you will eventually, no, the payroll tax credit is, it's federally funded dollars that credit, and you do not have to pay them back. They offset the wages you pay, and it is not a loan. So that money is done. Once you pay it, you take the credit, you do not have to pay it back. So an example, the payroll tax credit for FFCRA for the leave payments, you offset that and the federal dollars pay for it. You don't owe it back. The PPP is a loan. That one you do have to pay back if it's not forgiven. So you can take your whole PPP loan, spend it however you want, and it's just a loan. Now you have to pay that back over the course of 2 years. It's a fast payback. Or you pay it you use those dollars appropriately according to the definition for wages and for expenses, and then you get it forgiven. And so if you get it forgiven, you don't have to pay that back. I hope I answered that.
You did. Okay, next question. If an employee is sick and advised to go get tested, but they can telework, would they be eligible for the paid leave for the one day they were off to get tested?
They would be eligible for that day. And if they can work, if you can keep people working, if that works for you, I think it's fantastic. I love to see people shift to a remote workforce. There are a lot of benefits to that. And it's also very good for morale. So you can process 1 day of pay at that full pay number because the individual was advised to go get tested. If they can continue working during that window, that's great. If they are advised to quarantine and they're not able to work, then they would be eligible for that FFCRA under that program. So again, it's conversations. You want to talk to the people and figure out what's going on. If people can work from home and continue to work with you, I think that's great. And then they're getting regular pay.
Okay, next question. For the PPP forgiveness, if you have a payroll that is semi-monthly, can you just use 2 months of payroll, or do you need to figure out your payroll amount by day and figure out the exact 56 days?
Okay, so you do need to figure out the exact 56 days. even though they're allowing some wiggle room on the front and back to match a payroll cycle, they are not expanding it. So it isn't 2 full months. It is that 56 days. So you want to be careful. If you need to shave off a couple days on the front side to make it match the next payroll cycles after that, or if you want to cut it a couple days early to match the payroll cycle, then do that. But be careful. The amount of time hasn't changed. They're just allowing for a little bit of a shift.
Okay, the next one, Rachel, it's pretty long. It's just more of a situational question. We have an employee that has decided they want to stay home because they do not feel comfortable being out in the world. This employee has been home for about 8 weeks. When she decided to stay home 8 weeks ago, we told her we understand, and when she is ready to come back to work, she can. Well, during that time, her mom got ill with COVID. Within the 8 weeks, she was gone. She has not been paid the entire time due to choosing not to work. We also had a hard time reaching her at one point and told her that if she did not respond, we would take that as job abandonment. Do we need to pay her for any of this time? She has not requested anything or exhausted all her vacation and PTO. Whew.
Okay, again, a very specific answer. I'll kind of go high level, and then if you want to reach out to us, we can have a deeper conversation. But again, when you think about the FFCRA, these are people who are working. They're here, they're at your company, they're working on a regular basis, and then something happens, and they cannot come to work for one reason or another. So it doesn't apply to somebody who hasn't been working, and now all of a sudden they have a situation. So at the point, it sounds like she wasn't working for a number of weeks and decided not to come in. And so she wouldn't necessarily just automatically be eligible for 80 hours in the middle of that time where she's not working. Now, if in the beginning of it, you guys were closed and she was laid off or furloughed and she would have applied for unemployment, she may be eligible for the unemployment benefits, in which case she's not working, she's not with you, the FFCRA does not apply. So that's kind of my general high level answer, but we're happy to have a deeper conversation if you want to reach out to us after.
Yes, I see that they came back as far as she had to take care of her mother. We need to have maybe more of a one-on-one because we're not sure if she started taking care of her mother at the beginning of the 8 weeks when she decided she wasn't comfortable, or if her mother became ill within that time frame. If you just give me your email, I will reach out to you after the call and we can talk about, email me and I'll put my email in the chat box and you can reach out to me with your contact information and we'll reach out to you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Next question. We asked her to pay for the FTE report based on 40 hours, but we're told you could only report on 32. Has that changed or been updated?
No, we don't have a specific report that we've changed the hour count on. Now, we can create a report that tells you all of the hours. So we can give you, reports that show any hours, and then you divide by 40. So it's not something that's that hard to do because all the reports you just download into Excel and add the divide by 40 number and you would have it there. But again, with that one, it's the easiest thing is just count a full-time employee as 1 and a part-time employee as 0.5 and use that instead of doing the hour calculation. I think the federal government made it a little bit more complex than they had to with the whole calculation piece. Just count 1 for 1 and 0.5 for somebody who's part-time and keep it as simple as you can.
It says our FFRCA credit is automatic when we process payroll. How do we stop that?
Automatic when we our FFCRA credit is automatic when we process payroll. I'm not sure.
Someone's keying it that way. So either if you're doing your home, so you are selecting that category, and then the credit is kicking in, or if you're a managed payroll, you're still communicating to your payroll coordinator to put that individual under that category. So my best answer would be to determine how you do your payroll, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think that's I'm not sure what's happening with that. So, I mean, the FFCRA, when you do the payroll, you're coding an individual employee as an FFCRA leave. And so that's the only way it would go automatic. So if it's automatic, somebody's keyed something in that way. So
It's a human
I
error.
would say, right. And so maybe,
An error.
right, and maybe reach out to your payroll coordinator and bring that question up and see if they can click a button for you.
Next question, what earnings qualify for the ERTC?
Okay, so for the employee retention credit, it's the same thing. You're using, you're paying people who are not working for the most part. Unless you're under 100 employees, you may have people who aren't able to work in that window. So you want to just use an average of their wages. So how much did they make when they worked with you? Hourly rate, salary, plus tips, commissions, bonus, whatever, get an average number. And then you pay wages, but as soon as you are paying wages out and you reach that $10,000 number, you get up to a $5,000 credit on your taxes. So any wages that you use, get your average, that's what you pay with, and remember you've got that cap.
Next question, can we deduct the COVID-19 sick pay from the PPP loan wage total?
Can we deduct sick pay from the loan? You can. So again, like I said, you want to be careful not to double dip. So if you have somebody who's out on the FFCRA and you've got them coded under that C19 code we have, then you're not going to turn those wages in to get the forgiveness amount. Now, what you have to remember is then your loan forgiveness will be reduced by that amount. So it makes more sense to leave it in the PPP and not claim the tax credit on the leave, because if you don't pay the wages under the PPP loan, it won't be forgiven. And so if you're carving that out to get the tax credit on the FFCRA, then that your loan forgiveness will be reduced by that amount. So be careful and make sure you do the math. Look at how many wages you're expected to pay and stick with that number so you get it forgiven.
Rachel, this may be along the lines of the last question as far as the automatic credit being taken. We are getting an automatic credit under the FFCRA, sorry guys, for gross wages and employer portion of health when we process payroll. We were previously told by survey that this credit doesn't affect our PPP loan. I'm hearing the same thing again, that these tax credits seem to be automatic. To the best of my knowledge, that's not how the system was designed. You had to put in a code in order for that credit to be communicated through the system. This, again, we need whomever this question belongs to reach out to either your payroll coordinator or one of us so we can dive a little deeper into this.
And the other thing we can do on our end is, I'm going to do some digging too, because we did get the same question a couple times. I'm going to look and see what that looks like. But it's very clear. You want to be careful. The PPP loan forgiveness is for all of those wages, and they need to match what your loan amount was. If you are taking tax credits for leave that is paid, then it can only be one or the other. So either your forgiveness amount will be reduced by that credit amount that you're taking, or leave it in there and don't do the credit for FFCRA. Just do the loan dollars. So it's one or the other. It should not be both. And if we've got our system pulling both, I can double check on that and make sure that's fixed.
I just got some update. It says that they are using the code created by CertiPay. That's why they're they're getting the credit. We understand that,
Right.
but you have to have a drop down. You have to select the code. If you're using the PPP, you would not be selecting the code. If you're taking the tax
Right.
credit, you would be selecting the code. So if you're
Yeah.
just dropping it and selecting the code, that's where the issue is coming in.
Right. If you are in your 8-week window where your loan dollars are in effect, then don't select the C19 as a payment code during this window. You want to leave it there because you might use it later. But during this window, make sure those wages are regular wages. Don't code them C19.
Okay, next question on unemployment. For our employees receiving unemployment, they have come back to work and have been unable to reach unemployment to cancel their checks. They continue to receive checks. As the employer, do I contact unemployment? No, it's the employee's responsibility when they go into the system to report their earnings. Once that happens, that will either reduce their unemployment or it will stop. And eventually, as the employer, you will or we will get some documentation asking us, hey, I see earnings reported. Is this employee back to work? And then, yes, at that point in time, it would be the employer's job or CertaPay's job.
And so the other piece of that too is different states are in different places with that. So there are some states that are behind. I know in Florida, if they're still receiving checks, it may be because Florida's several weeks behind on that, and it doesn't mean anything. And there are several states where their payments are behind. And then the other thing is a lot of states have implemented an automatic shut off if you don't go in and claim another week, so that the employee has to actually physically go in and say, yes, I'm still unemployed, and claim the week. And so there are mechanisms now that are in place that if an employee is back to work, then unemployment will cut off at a certain point because they're not requesting more weeks. Or, and a lot of states, I know that the systems are so bogged down that you may not be able to log into it to say, yes, my employee's back to work. So, you know, it kind of depends on your state as well.
Rachel, just to parlay off that, someone asked if they would have to pay back their unemployment.
They may. You know, we don't know exactly how that's going to look. There may be people who received funds from unemployment a week or two after they went back, and you know, we don't know exactly how that's going to look, but it's possible that they would have to pay back some of those funds.
The last question I see from unemployment: does an employee lose unemployment benefits if they refuse to come back to work once you are opened back up?
The simple answer is yes. Technically, yes. If you have work available and you're saying, we need you, come in, your position's here, and they say no, that's the same as a voluntary resignation. And so when you go into the unemployment system, you marked that this employee declined to come to work, or the employee voluntarily resigned, and then that would impact the decision on the unemployment. So that's the simple answer, but it just isn't very simple right now because the systems are so bogged down. So they ultimately will see that the employee voluntarily resigned, and it will impact their benefits, but you know, there's only so much we can do because of the volume of cases going through.
I have no other questions in the chat box. However, if you put your email in there, I will copy and paste them all and get out the information to everyone.
Yeah, very good. And also, Claire from our team made a great suggestion too. When you've offered somebody a position and they decline it, you can put it in writing, send them a letter, an email, something in writing that specifically says that it's job abandonment or they voluntarily resigned, and that way you've got your backup. So there are different ways to approach that, but yes, it is, you know, it's just a little bit of a different world right now. So we want to thank you once again. CertaPay is here for you. We have a lot of great tools and technology, and most importantly, people. We have the HR team that is the most spectacular, and we can help you with any of your HR issues. We have fantastic payroll platforms, and we're also running a payroll special. So if you're not already a CertaPay client, we hope you join us soon. And if you guys have questions or need help, reach out to us anytime. We are so glad to be an information resource for you. And we hope you join us again next week for our next coffee break. And we're going to really kind of break down the PPP to help you make sure you get it forgiven. So for those of you who had the PPP questions, join us next week and we'll break down how to make sure you get your loan forgiven on that. Thanks so much, guys. We hope you have a wonderful day. It's been a pleasure. Make sure we get your email and we will get you some more info. Thank you very much.